Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're basically going to completely dismantle everything you thought you knew about dating, relationships, and human attraction. We are diving deep into the fascinating psychiatric breakdown of modern love, courtesy of Harvard-trained psychiatrist Dr. K. So, if you've ever wondered why modern dating just feels so broken lately or why falling in love feels harder than ever, well, you are definitely in the right place. Grab a seat and get ready because we're going to look at some highly counterintuitive truths that will absolutely change the way you view human connection. All right, let's just jump right in with a quote that pretty much completely flips the script. Dr. K argues that one of the absolute stupidest things we do right now is date people simply because we're attracted to them. Now, I know, that sounds totally crazy at first, but think about it like this. When you wake up in the morning, you might be highly attracted to the idea of eating a giant sugary cookie and going right back to sleep. But you don't do it, right? Because you know it's bad for you. Yet when it comes to love, we just blindly trust our primitive instincts. We follow our immediate biological cravings and assume, hey, if I'm drawn to someone, it must mean they're right for me. But as we're about to see, trusting that initial craving is actually often a recipe for disaster. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll unpack the paradox of attraction. Then we'll look at how your smartphone is quite literally attacking your ability to fall in love. Third, we'll reveal the actual scientific formula for falling for someone. Fourth, we'll fast forward to navigating marriage and conflict. And finally, we're going to completely redefine the science of charisma. Okay, starting off with Section 1, the paradox of attraction, instinct versus reality. We really need to dismantle this modern myth that following your gut instincts is the scientifically correct way to find a partner. Take this concept, for example, repetition compulsion. It essentially answers that age-old question of why people repeatedly date the exact wrong partners. So if someone grew up with, say, an emotionally distant or abusive parent, their brain actually wires itself to be attracted to those exact same toxic traits in adulthood. Why does it do that? Because the subconscious mind is basically thinking, hey, if I can make this new person love me, I will finally fix that wound from my childhood. We end up mistaking this really deep, painful psychological repetition for genuine chemistry or attraction. And honestly, this is exactly why our modern dating tools are failing us so badly. Dating apps are essentially just filtering for resumes and so-called green flags, height, job, income, having perfectly curated hobbies. But long-term relationship success, it has absolutely nothing to do with a resume. It's entirely about how two people navigate early conflict and whether a person is actually willing to change and grow. In fact, Dr. K points out that some of the most successful relationships actually start with an early red flag. Navigating a difficult hurdle early on teaches you exactly how that person handles conflict, and that is a way better predictor of success than a flawless Tinder profile. Moving on to Section 2, Technology's attack on dopamine. Where did the spark go? Have you ever wondered why people say they just don't get butterflies anymore? Well, it turns out it's a neurochemical problem. The really crucial point here is understanding the difference between two specific brain chemicals. Dopamine governs the thrill of craving and anticipation. It's that jittery butterfly feeling when you're waiting for a text back or waiting for your date to walk through the door. Serotonin, on the other hand, governs the deep peace and contentment of a long-term bond. So what's the problem? Well, our modern world of social media, infinite scrolling, and instant gratification has completely fried our dopamine circuits. We've built up such a high dopamine tolerance from staring at our phones all day that simply sitting across from a human being in a coffee shop barely even registers in our brains anymore. The spark is missing simply because our dopamine stores are entirely depleted. So how do we actually fix it? Dr. K proposes a highly practical, science-backed solution for this. The 1-hour rule. It's simple. If you want to actually feel something on a date, do not look at your cell phone for a full hour before you meet the person. Walk to the date, take the subway, whatever. Just leave the phone in your pocket. You have to give your dopamine stores time to regenerate so you can neurochemically set yourself up to experience the anticipation and thrill of actual human connection. Which brings us to Section 3, the formula for falling, the actual science of love. Believe it or not, there is a literal scientific formula for how human beings fall in love, and it builds this perfect recipe for connection. Step 1 is a shared emotional experience. Studies have actually shown that if two people meet on, say, a terrifying rickety suspension bridge, the shared anxiety and relief instantly breeds a really deep empathic connection. Step 2 is repeated unplanned interactions. I mean, this is exactly why workplace romances are so incredibly common. Scheduled dates carry massive pressure and all these heavy expectations, but just bumping into someone at the office every day or trauma bonding over a stressful project, that removes the pressure. And when the pressure drops, genuine emotion just naturally arises. And to further prove just how wrong our societal assumptions about intimacy truly are, consider this staggering number. A lot of modern dating and intimacy is heavily driven by porn-infused societal expectations, right? And that leads to a rise in aggressive behaviors and massive performance anxiety. But real survey data actually shows that 50% of women want physical intimacy to last 15 minutes or less. We so often build these massive, complex narratives about what the opposite gender wants, when the reality is usually much simpler and just heavily distorted by the media we consume. All right, section 4, navigating marriage and conflict. Let's talk about the reality of commitment. So, you've fallen in love, you've committed, and now you actually have to navigate the complex realities of marriage. This leads us to a fascinating and often unspoken hurdle in young families: mother's touch starvation. This is this wildly paradoxical phase where a mother is so physically overwhelmed by the sheer demands of childcare that she is internally starving for emotional intimacy, but actively irritated by her partner's physical touch. And the problem gets compounded because men are socially conditioned to try and fix problems rather than just holding emotional space. Dr. K points out quite bluntly that men generally lack the skills to provide comforting, non-sexual touch, just because it's not something society ever really teaches them to do. And when that communication breaks down, the consequences are incredibly stark. Just look at this statistic: 70% of divorces are initiated by women. Now, to truly understand why this happens, we really have to look at how men and women process the institution of marriage differently. There is a profound psychological divide going on here. When you ask a woman what she loses in a divorce, she typically says she is losing a relationship. But when you ask a man, he says he's losing his life, his home, his routine, his core identity. This is exactly why the dissolution of marriage impacts men so aggressively on a purely physiological level. Men going through divorce are actually at a significantly higher risk for Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, which is literally known as broken heart syndrome. It's a dangerous inflammation of the heart muscle, because for a lot of men, the marriage is their entire structural world. That brings us to our final section, section 5, the science of charisma and magnetic traits. So, if physical attraction and a perfect dating app resume aren't the answer, what actually makes a person magnetic? Here is the actual peer-reviewed breakdown of charisma. Number 1, having a vision for your life. You don't have to be rich, you just have to know where you are going. Number 2, articulation. It's the ability to communicate that vision clearly to others. Number 3, crisis management and emotional regulation. A truly charismatic leader is the person you naturally turn to when things go wrong. And number 4, a connection to divinity or some kind of higher spiritual purpose. The absolute most crucial takeaway here: physical appearance is actually incredibly low on the scientific hierarchy of what makes someone charismatic. True magnetism is really about emotional stability and having a direction in life. We've covered a massive amount of ground today, and I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. People so often say, "I've tried everything, I've listened to all the advice, and nothing works. Dating is just totally broken." But if every single external solution keeps failing, could the common denominator be you? Now, before you get defensive, I want you to realize that this is actually the most empowering truth in the world. You cannot control society, you cannot control dating apps, and you certainly can't control other people. But you can control yourself. If you are the problem, then you alone hold the absolute power to fix it. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a whole new lens through which to view your own relationships.